What's going on? It's your boy, Randage. Welcome, guys. Welcome. Today is the penultimate, the final, the absolute, the finishing list, the top list, the one that's going to set this list apart from the rest that I've shown. Today we're gonna break it down for you, okay? We're gonna go through every card. We're gonna explain why these slots aren't filled. I've got tons of images to show you guys on screen, from win percentages to a matchup chart that I'm gonna have in post. There's also a bunch of different graphs showcasing the deck's performances. This is just going to be the ultimate video. This is going to be the best video I've ever made. It's going to be the most informative video I've ever made. And this is hopefully going to be a treat for everybody watching and listening. And that's enough praising it. Why don't we just break it down? Let's get into the stew, the meat and potatoes of this deck. Leading off our monsters, we've got 2 Raikou. So with Raikou, 3 Raikou is obviously good. You get 3 more mills. If you resolve all 3 Raikous, you get 3 more mills. It's a really good card going first in your starter. But the reason I only play 2 is because, honestly, Raikou by itself isn't amazing. It usually 1-for-1s every time it resolves, but you're not progressing the board state. You're not doing something proactive. It's a reactive card. It requires to be converted once you resolve it and it doesn't die. So like you need Caius, or you need Book of Moon, you need Gale, you need Plague, something to go alongside Raikou and turn it into something else, or do something with it so it doesn't just stay there and be a liability. I slimmed down to 2 Raikou because I think 2 might just be the magic number. You can still run Charge, which is the only reason, honestly, that I'm still running Raikous. Is that Charge is just such a good spell, especially in Vayu Turbo. You got to be able to have at least more than one target to activate Charge, because as you guys know, in Edison Format, if there are no targets in your deck, you cannot fail to find. Otherwise, I'd probably just run this card without it. Maybe just one target, right? So we got at least 2 targets. We're still going to see it enough for our starter. It's still going to be able to be decently set up and converted with our Caius, Book of Moon, Gale, Plague, like I said. And all in all, it's just good. You still want the Raikou for the Consecrated Lights post board against Fairy decks or Lightsworn. Raikou's still pretty good against Blackwings. Any kind of aggro deck where you can like stunt their play. Pretty good against control decks too. But like I said, like outside of turn 1, you really want to be like normal summoning like your Armanite, your Card Trooper, your Dark Grepher, something else, right? You don't want to like have an open board state where you can normal and like go for damage, but you don't have it, so you just have to set another Raikou, right? It's a slow play. Every time you set it, your opponent most likely knows what it is, unless you're running Sanguine or Hamster, which are also notably not in this list. We'll get into that more later. But honestly, I played 50 games with this list specifically, and only 2 Raikou, and it never came up, guys. There was not a single situation where Charge of the Blight Brigade was not live. In 50 games, 50 full sets. So keep that in mind. Next, we've got our Card Trooper. A really good card. It's awesome. Draws a card when it's destroyed on the field. Doesn't have to just be by battle. Goes up to 1900. It can run stuff over. It trades with Kawaki Dragu. Trades with Alias. Runs over Stratos. Runs over most of the Gladiator Beasts, unless that one, I forget his name all the time. Unless he's 2100. We'll put that on screen. Yeah, Card Trooper is just super good. It's a Raikou on wheels. It's an aggressive card. It's draw cycling. It's just super good. Then we got 2 Armanites. I used to run 1. I used to run 0. I used to run 3. And honestly, I just came back to the 2. This is the ratio that James Arc popularized, and I think it's correct. I think 2 Armanite is just the number. It's good on the starter play if you can dump Necrogardna. It's good in starter play in general. You can just like dump a Vayu something, don't draw later, or Plague, set up a 6 for next turn. It's good in the middle of the game and also the late game, because when your hand size gets smaller and you don't have a discard for Grepher, you can still just send something, and at that point in the game, all you're going to need to do is send 1 piece to set up a synchro play. It's also really good with Malicious, because you can dump the Mali, then you've only got 1 in deck, and as long as you get the Plague in there, and even if you draw the second Mali, you can stack it with the Plague. Armanite's just super good. And like I said, I used to run 3 with this list, but I ended up going back down to 2. I think I had too many normal summons with the Caius Raikou stuff. Just good at all stages of the game, and I think it's just too good not to run it at least 2. Then we got Dark Greffer. This is your extender. You don't normally want to summon him turn 1 unless you're playing something that you know has a hard time outing 2300s, because this way you can like dodge the bottomless. But Greffer's super good in the malicious list because you have the 2 Mali and the Plague, which if you draw Greffer or Rhoda, then you have malicious or Plague, then that's an instant level 8, guys, in your opener. Like, you can just send one of these 2, dump the other one from your deck, and then you've got a level 8. And it's super good play. I'm surprised I'm the only person doing this. Hopefully we can see some more usage out of these cards. Because I really think this is truly powerful. But Greffer, a lot of people try running this card at 3 without enough discard outlets. And you guys gotta remember, Greffer by itself, just as a 1700, is not good. It's practically a vanilla. So you need to be able to have enough cards to discard to get his effect. So the way I kind of value this, just as like in a vacuum, like as a general thing, usually I like to run my cards 3 to 1 that require other cards. Now the exception to this in this list is the Raikou, because I have 2 to 1. But like I was saying, like, it just hasn't come up, right? But I feel like with Dark Greffer, it's going to matter a lot more, because Raikou by itself, like, it's still a good card. It demands the 1-for-1, but Dark Greffer doesn't, right? Dark Greffer doesn't do anything without discarding. You can't set it and pop something or mill cards. You have to send something from your hand and then dump from the deck for it to do anything. Which is why, like, when these people run these Dark Greffer hybrid Blackwing decks with like 3 Greffer and a Rhoda, like, you've only got your 3 Vayu and your 3 Sirocco. That's only 6 discards, right? So you're running essentially 4 copies of Dark Greffer with 6 discards. The ratios do not match. They do not make sense. They don't add up. In Vayu, especially my list, let's take a look here. We've got 2 Malicious, the Necro Gardener. You got 3 Vayu, 2 Sirocco, 1 Plague. 9 discards for 3 Greffer. Essentially 4 Greffer with Rhoda, but you have to remember, Rhoda can also get you Armanite, so you don't have to essentially worry about that. The math adds up. It's 3 to 1. Malicious, there's really not too much to say. You dump them with Arma or Greffer, or you can pitch it with Greffer and then dump the Plague. Also, in a pinch, if you absolutely need to, you can banish this guy for a free tribute summon for Caius, which comes up. Not too much, but it does come up. He's just nice, man. I just love having it. You can also special summon Greffer from the hand by discarding the Malicious, which is something you can also do with like Sirocco or Elfin if you run that. So this also comes up as well, especially if your hand is like Greffer, Arma, Malicious. You can do plays where you special the Greffer by pitching the Malicious, then you discard something like Vayu or Sirocco or Plague if you have that, or Gardna. Then you can dump another card, which if you don't already have the Plague, it could be that, or it could be the other piece to go alongside the Vayu or Sirocco you pitched from your hand off Greffer. And then you can normal summon Armageddonite and like send Gardna or Plague or whatever else you need. And you can potentially get an OTK board just like that, because Malicious can get you a level 8 synchro. And we're going to see that in some of the replays that I post. To Caius. So James used to always run the 3 Caius because it's Caius, right? Caius is just a strong card. He's good. He removes stuff. He's a big tribute. He converts over the Raikous. But honestly, guys, 3 Caius can get a little cloggy. You have ways to unclog it, like a lure. Essentially, you only want to tribute over like Sengen or Raikou or Armanite. Like turn 1, you could go Armanite, dump the Gardna, and then like you have the Gardna protect the Armanite in case you don't have the back row for it, and then you can just tribute over it for Caius, which is a nice play. We want to be able to play fast. Vayu Turbo has the luxury of being able to play very fast in this format with the quote-unquote 2-turn clock that everyone knows about, makes 4,000. This deck can just play really fast, and when you're playing really slow cards like Raikou and Caius, maxing out on them kind of slows down the wheels that your deck can do. So Necrogardna, this is the card that I have shit on since I started playing Vayu. I think the very first time I played Vayu, maybe like within the first 10 games, I just cut this card. I didn't like it. Like, even with 3 Kaias, I just didn't like it. I didn't understand it. I didn't like that my opponent knew it was in the graveyard, and like, they can just look at my graveyard at any time and see Gardna in there and be like, okay, I can easily just play around this. Just because your opponent sees the Gardna in the graveyard doesn't make Gardna bad. It forces your opponent to play differently, while at the same time it's protecting your stuff. And it's a dark for lure. It's synergies with Burial, obviously. It's good with Grepher. It's good with Arma, especially if you have hands where you have like 2 Grepha discards. So like, you'd have like maybe a Vayu and a Gardna in hand with a Grepher. You could send the Gardna first, then like dump the Rocco. The Gardna's in the grave, so your Grepher is protected, and then next turn you can just discard the other thing because they couldn't get rid of your Grepher. So Gardna comes up a lot for that. Another interesting thing is that Gardna is a warrior, so you could Rhoda add Gardna so that you have a dark Grepher discard, or you could add Rhoda add Gardna and then use a lure, and now you have a dark banish, and you still have Burial later to reuse the Gardna, so you actually get some value out of it. Next, we've got Gores. The simplest explanation for why I run Gores is that it's just the best +1 monster in the format, in my opinion. Only downside of Gores is that sometimes it can be a little bit annoying if you run too many back row, or too much back row that sticks, like maybe Oppression or something. But it's just all about how you play your hand, guys. There's no real way your opponent can play around a Gores in your hand. It's just very hard. You know, Gores is also like a card you can bluff. Like, if you're really down bad and your opponent knows that you do run Gores because maybe they saw it game 1, or maybe you're in a tournament and they scouted you for the round and they saw that you had Gores, you can bluff the Gores even if it's not in your hand. Which can also be a really nice tool you can utilize within your game. It's a +1, it's a huge body, it's a dark monster. The token makes pretty good tribute fodder for Kai's as well, which is notable. But yeah, Gores is just Gores, man. It's just super good, and since there's no Oppression in the main deck, which we'll get into later as well, I just think it makes too much sense to run it, especially because we're running these Malicious. So it's like, Malicious is kind of a card and it's kind of not a card, so like, when you're running these like Garnet-esque cards, like, you need more defense, and I think Gores just makes most sense here. You got Gale. Honestly, I'm just gonna kind of skimmer through this Gale because I feel like Gale's pretty self-explanatory so far out of all the cards we've gone through. It can single-handedly out cards like Stardust Dragon, which is very nice. You can special it alongside Sirocco. You could like normal Sirocco, special Gale, and then there's level 8, and you get your Gale effect. Special it out alongside your Synchros to try to go for a really, really big swing. It Gale's Gale. It tunes well with Raikou to convert for level 5, like Catastor. Yeah, Gale's Gale. It's just nice. Then you got 3 Vayu. Obviously, it wouldn't be a Vayu deck without 3 Vayu. You can potentially use this guy up to like 4 or 5 times in a single game. He's just super good. He gets under Oppression. If it demands a Crow, it works well with like Icarus attack and stuff too if you want to run that. But Vayu's Vayu. This is just a core card of the deck. Same thing with Sirocco, core card of the deck. The only difference is, like, kind of like Gale, Sirocco's really good by itself, whereas Vayu needs something else to be good. Sirocco's really good in the mirror match. You can pump up using your opponent's monsters, boost your attack. Same thing against the Blackwing matchup. If they have like Shura on the field, you can normal Sirocco, pump, and then attack, and you don't even have to worry about Kalut, which is a very, very nice benefit of having Sirocco. Yeah, it's just Sirocco. Then we got Dad. This is our boss monster. This is our big boy. It's our bomb. This is our Saki win button card. This is our Saki come back and win out of nowhere like Randy Orton RKO card. This is just the dude. This is like the best card in the deck. Potentially, obviously, most likely, without a doubt, one of the best cards in Edison format. Probably top 3, absolutely. Dad is Dad. That's all I can say. Then you got Plague. We talked about Plague enough already. If you flip up Raikou and it sticks, you can normal summon Plague, then tune for Armory Arm, and then in your graveyard you can go with Vayu Sirocco, and you can make a level 6, or you can special summon Malicious, and then you can use Plague's effect and then get him back from the graveyard, and then you can make Colossal Fighter, and now you've got Armory Arm plus Colossal Fighter, and all you need is for your opponent to have a monster. You can slap on the Armory Arm to OTK them, so that's also a really nice play. Spells, Heavy Storm MST. I don't think I can say anything about these cards. They're just staple spell trap removal. Charge we've already talked about. It's just really good in Vayu. We've got 2 Raikou targets. RoD I think makes a lot of sense as well, because we've got 3 Greffer, 2 Arma, the 1 Gardna. Just want to see these cards at all stages of the game. We got Allure, also just makes complete sense. Special note, you can synergize this with Return as well, which we'll get into. Allure is just very good. Brain Con works extremely well with Caius and Plague and Gale, so Brain Con is like a no-brainer, you know what I'm saying? Another thing you can do in the mirror match is you can take like your opponent's Dark Greffer or your opponent's Card Trooper, which I've done a lot of times, and then you can use their effects because they're once per turn, and then you can do your own combos. And you got Burial, another bomb, another sacky bullshit card, just like Dad. You have to have already resolved all your really good cards, so it's like it's win more, but it's also not, because like sometimes this card could just be exactly what you need to win the game. And then 1 Book of Moon. The reason I run 1 is because we are running the 2 Raikous, right? We need something to be able to convert the Raikou, otherwise it just sits there, and we don't want Raikou to just sit there. Its only purpose isn't to just set Raikou. Like, you can set your monster from the opponent's Brain Con, you can set down your opponent's Consecrated Light, you could set down your opponent's Koaki Drago, you can, you know, set down your Armanite that's stuck for a turn, then flip it back up and use his effect again. You know, you can set down anything, really. I mean, you could set down your Armor Master that you made with Vayu the turn prior, then flip it back up, and now he's got his effect. Like, there's just so many different things that Book of Moon can do that, like, no other card can really do. And, like, we talk about how Book of Moon is a neg-1 essentially, but when used in the right way and used with the right cards, it's not a neg-1. It can honestly just be the glue that keeps your deck together or keeps you in the game. And we've got, moving on to the traps, we've got 2 Bottomless Trap Hole. Why do I run this? Randage, you've talked about how Bottomless has been mid before. Why isn't it in your side deck anymore? Why are you back to maining it? Well, so Vayu Turbo has this one thing about it. There's just this one thing about Vayu Turbo that it can't really do that other decks can. It has trouble removing monsters that are larger than 2300. Now, why do I say that? Well, it's because your main core bread and butter is to make an Armed Wing with Vayu Sirocco. Now, obviously, you can make Armor Master with Armed Wing Vayu, but that comes later, right? That's later in the game. You don't get to do that out the gate. So the reason that Bottomless is in here is to stop your opponent from making those monsters like that are just too big for you to run over, because like that's just the one thing you have trouble getting rid of, which is also why I like Gores and you know why Gale is good, and you know the Malicious to make a level 8 tune. Like all these cards just help at dealing with like that one thing that still is like a thorn in the side of this deck. And Bottomless also, it's just good. Like, it can get rid of like opponents Bora, Shura, Sirocco, whatever against the Blackwing matchup when they have Whirlwind. And it's like, sure, you could run Dimensional Prison or something in these slots, right? Like, that could also kind of serve the purpose of getting rid of monsters that are large. Like, Dimensional Prison gets rid of Stardust Dragon, but Bottomless Trap Hole doesn't. But it's also like, if your opponent drops Dad, like, yeah, they'll get priority and they'll get to pop something, but like, they can only do that once, and then you're flipping the Bottomless, right? And then it's dead, then it's gone. Same thing against plants. If your opponent doesn't have Cold Wave, but they do manage to get out the Black Rose, they're going to blow up the field. Like, you know what's going to happen. Bottomless doesn't stop the effect, but you can chain Bottomless and banish it, and now they can't use Avarice and get the Black Rose back in their deck, so they can't do it again. You know, bottomless versus deep prison is like a conversation I think we're always gonna have, but like bottomless just does a couple things more that deep prison does, and honestly I just kind of prefer the bottomless at this point. Another thing is like Judgment Dragon against Lightsworn. Like, you know, obviously it doesn't stop the cold wave play or the true nade or whatever, but like if they don't have that and they just need to slam JD, like at least you're getting rid of the JD, you know what I mean? Like the effect's going off, but at least you're getting rid of the big problem boss monster. And we got Torrential. It's kind of like the same thing as Bottomless, except it's a little bit, like it can do a lot more. You can remove a lot more cards off Torrential, and it can be like a huge mega plus, or it can just be one of those cards you draw where you're already so far ahead and you've already got board presence, and like now you draw Torrential and it's just kind of in your hand. It's like, do you set it? Because like if they chain, or if they MST or something, you can't really chain it. Or like if you have monsters on board and they summon something big, you don't want to like Torrential kill their monster and then blow up like 3 of yours, right? So Torrential is a little bit trickier, especially because there's no Sangan, which I'll talk about once we go through the rest of our cards here. But it does work with the Card Trooper. It's really nice when you can just like set Gardna or Vayu, bait your opponent to play like a Shura or something, or a Fire Dog, and then like you Torrential. So like you're going neg 1, but it's only neg 1 for a while because like these cards float in the graveyard. Then we've got Mirror Force. It's kind of the same thing as Torrential, except it's not a double-edged sword. It's just pure value. Everyone respects Mirror Force, right? Like everyone knows what Mirror Force does, but it's still Mirror Force. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know how much I can really say this without using the proper words or explain it, but like Mirror Force and Torrential are just 2 staple traps that your deck needs. Otherwise your opponent will play differently, not respect your back row, and these cards can just save you, man. These can be pure safety nets, and that's what I like to call these. These are safety net cards. Then we got Dust Shoot. Fucking stupidly broken. I don't even want to talk about it. You guys know how stupid this card is. Then you've got Solemn Judgment. This card can be a little annoying in the beginning stages of the game when you have so much life points, because you do pay half, but it is such a good card. It stops practically almost anything, and I think if your deck has defensive capabilities, you should be playing Solemn Judgment. Guys, why do I play Return? Because it's just so good with Malicious Plague. Like if you resolve Malicious Plague, they're both getting banished, and now you have a level 8 Toon Synchro in your banish zone, just ready to get special summoned and make it again. And then like the Plague goes back to the graveyard. Like this card, when you resolve it and you have the setup already in play for it, like it's just a win. Like it's just a straight up win. It also works really well with Dark Arm Dragon and with Allure, because like you can banish those cards and get them back later anyway. It's just awesome. It's just super, super good. There's also really not any confliction anymore, because I know in my God video I did like main deck the Oppressions, which did conflict a little bit, but I was pretty sold on needing Oppression, and like now I'm not. So Return's just even better now. Anyway, that's my total breakdown of the main deck. I hope I explained everything as much as possible and went through it quickly enough. Let's move into the side. So 2 Cyber Dragon, it's just a free summon 2100 beater. It's really good against the aggro matchups. You guys know how all that stuff goes. It's exceptionally good against the machine decks. That's about as much as I can really say about it, other than like it's good tribute fodder for Kai's sometimes as well. Why don't I run Chaos Sorcerer? There's only 2 light monsters. That's the only reason. There's just 2 light monsters. There's not enough fuel to gas the engines of Chaos Sorcerer's booty. Anyway, 2 Vanity's Fiend. These come in over the Caius. It's a perfect 1-to-1 side in, side out. Vanity's Fiend's very good against the dragon decks that special summon a lot. It's pretty good against Lightsworn as well, because they would need like Raikou, or they would need a normal summon plus Honest. Also, it's very good against plants. This is one of your core anti-plant cards as well. It's also very good against frogs. Like, there's just a lot of decks where Vanity's Fiend is good. And one of the benefits of Vayu, opposed to like the hybrid Blackwing list, is that Vayu can play Vanity's Fiend, and the hybrid list has to play Fossil Dyna. UDD Crow, just super good. I've been back and forth with maining this card, actually. As long as my list had a Sangan, I was maining at least one. You can also like play an Icarus attack or something too if you wanted to. We'll get into more but like more techie options to fill in these slots later. Crow's just good though. It's good against plants because you can chain it to the Avarice. It's good at setting yourself up for a dad if you need 3 darks in the grave in a pinch. It's good against the mirror match, obviously. You can hit the Vayu and stuff. Good against Light Sworn, take them off a name. You know, it's just a good card. Good against zombies. Not too deck devy. This is just also, it's like an anti-plant card, anti-frog card, anti-dragon turbo card because you can take them off their cards of consonants. I mean, it's really stupid. It's very good against fairies too. Jaina's gonna hate me for saying that, but yeah, it's very good against fairies. All their stuff is under bottomless attack level, and then other than Christia, I guess, and then just like dies to deck Devi, and it hits the Honest too, which is really, really nice. Also, this card hits Trigodia too, so that helps in the dragon matchup as well, and maybe Light Sworn if they're on Trag, but also some plants run Trag as well. Zombie. It's good against zombies too because it can also hit Trag, it hits the Diva, it hits all the zombies. Like deck Devi's just really good. Dust Tornado. So this is a card that has never been in one of my side decks for any of my Vayu lists that's been on the channel. I've totally changed my mind on it. I think playing against stuff that runs Dimensional Fissure, like Gladiator Beasts, for example, sometimes even Hero Beat, like if they side out Miracles if they're on it. Dimensional Fissure is a total, like, potential blowout card. You just can't play under it, which is very annoying, so you need Dust Tornado for that stuff. Also, this is more of like a rogue deck, but like Gravekeepers, like you need to be able to hit the Necro Valley as well. You can kind of play through it a little bit with like Malicious and Plague and Gardna. Like those cards can move themselves out of the graveyard under Necro Valley, but Vayu cannot, and like that's your core card, right? So Dust Tornado just helps against those decks that try to play the macro-esque kind of floodgates that you need to get rid of. So yeah, Dust Tornado. Also, it's pretty good against Blackwings too, because it hits the Whirlwind, and also they just play a lot of back row. Same thing with Hero Beat. If they're on the Skyscraper, it hits Skyscraper too, which is really nice. And also they just play a lot of back row. So Dust Tornado is just good. It's not a huge, powerful, game-changing card post board, but it's like kind of just like some good consistency to protect you from like the stuff that could blow you out. So it's kind of not a safety net, but it's like insurance, right? These are like insurance. You're buying safe auto insurance. I don't know. That's what Dust Tornado does for you. Then we got Sided Oppression. So why did I change main deck Oppression into the side? Honestly, it's just because Malicious and Return and Gores, like those 3 cards are just so good, and especially just like good in this Vayu list. Like these cards win you the game. Oppression does not. Oppression's very good. It's an insanely good floodgate, but it's not good against every deck, and especially against decks like Blackwings or the Vayu Mirror Match. Like Oppression just doesn't do anything. It's a liability. It's essentially like a neg 0.5. It's like half a card. Like you can Oppression like the Blizzard or something if they don't have the Whirlwind. But like it's just, I don't know. I'd rather have Malicious, Gores, and Return in my main deck than main deck Oppression. Because if I'm playing against something like dragons or zombies, what's the other deck? Plants. If I'm playing against one of those decks, I can still just side in the Oppression anyway when I'm also siding in Vanities and Deck Devi and Crow, and it's like I don't see how they win when I have all these cards sided. So even if I lose game 1 because I don't have main Oppression, game 2 and 3 I'm 100% or very near 100% like just gonna win because they can't stop all these cards. And like Return and Mali, like these cards can potentially be sacks. Like I can sack the shit out of my opponent, even if I'm playing against those decks, before they can get a chance to establish themselves and try to kill me without me having oppression. So like those decks take time to develop and to get their plays going before they go off and like actually make their plays. Like they need a few turns, but Vayu doesn't. Vayu just needs like 1 or 2 turns. Those other decks need like 3 or 4, sometimes even 5. So having oppression, it's like I have it for when they inevitably set up their play, but at the same time they could also just draw MST or have Phoenix Wing, and then they can just chain it to the oppression, and now I have nothing. I didn't do any pressure. I didn't aggro them down because now I'm just fucked. Like I'm just probably gonna die. So my game 1 strategy with maining oppression against the decks that oppression's good against, they're gonna buy the time to get their plays going anyway. And in the same amount of time that you're waiting for them to do that and then flip oppression, they could have MST, they could have Phoenix Wing, and it's like now you're fucked. But whereas where game 1, if I kill them with Return or Gores or the Malicious Plague combo before they even get to that situation, then I think my odds are just as good than having the oppression main and making them draw MST or something, right? So, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain it, but that's my best job at trying to. But yeah, game 2, like you still bring the oppressions in. I don't think you need them game 1 when you're running these cards. If you're not running Gore's Return Malicious, like if you're not running these cards, you will absolutely need to main deck oppression. If you're not maining these 3 cards, you have no reason not to main oppression. Just keep that in mind. So like if I wasn't running these, oppression would be mained. But since I am, and we went through that strategy that I was just talking about, that's why I decided. Alright, let's move on to the extra deck. Chimera Tech. We're running 2 Cyber Dragons. It just makes too much sense. Also against the mirror match, sometimes I like to bring in 1 Cyber Dragon when I'm going second, just because like Cyber Dragon runs over Greffer and Sirocco. They play Card Trooper, so if they have like Card Trooper opener or something like that, or like turn 1 they go Arma, and like I set Raikou, and then like turn 2 comes and like they normal summon Card Trooper, then like they mill with that, and like Raikou can get rid of the Armor Knight, and then like they hit me for 19, and then I special out the Sidra, and you know how it goes. So, like Sidra, it's not just for machine decks. Like having 1 Sidra bringing in against the mirror match, or any deck that plays Card Trooper, potentially even Plants, because Plants can play Card Trooper. Having the 1 Cyber Dragon's nice because you can tech out from the Card Trooper and make Chimera Tech. Another thing too is that Cyber Dragon against Fairies and against Hero Beat, those decks both play Cyber Dragon. Like I think Fairies side Cyber Dragon and it almost always brings it in against Vayu, whereas like Hero Beat main Cyber Dragon. So like against those decks too, you can just side in the Cyber Dragons and then like Chimera Tech your Sidra with their Sidra. You know what I mean? So you need to run the Chimera Tech. 2 Armed Wing. I only run the 2. Some people run 3 when they have like 3 Sirocco, but I'm not totally sold on 3 Sirocco. I think 2 might just be the magic number, kind of like how Armor Knight is at 2. And like Caius. Yeah, Armed Wing, he's just like your bread and butter. Then you got the 2 Armor Master, so the reason you run 2 of these is because you Vayu Sirocco Armed Wing, then you Vayu Armed Wing for Armor Master, and then at some point in the game you're going to have your Burial, so like you put back the Armed Wing, and then you can make a second Armor Master. So that's why you run 2 of him as well. And 1 Silverwind. Silverwind is just if you resolve Vayu later in the game, or like Gale +4 and you get Armor Master out, then you have Vayu plus Armor Master, and that gets you Silverwind. And he's 28 as well, which is just really big. Then we got Armory Arm. We already talked about that. Plague plus Raikou. Catastor, talked about that. Raikou plus Gale. Goyo and Brio, the best 6s in the format. Brio's really nice because you can send stuff like Malicious and Vayu and Plague and Gardener from your hand. So you're going neg 1 on the bounce effect, or it's like neg 0.5 because you're bouncing the card, but then like these cards float in the graveyard. Also, it's really good at removing other opponents' big synchro monsters, like a Colossal Fighter or something, or Stardust Dragon. And Goyo can get rid of Stardust Dragon as well, but it requires battle. Also, Goyo is just very good. Like, I don't think I need to talk about it too much. You got Dark End. This is like probably the best deck that can make Dark End Dragon. It's just Armed Wing plus Plague, or Malicious plus Plague, or Gale plus Sirocco. Like, you've got 3 different ways to make Dark End, and he's just very good. He doesn't destroy the card he sends to the graveyard, he just sends it, so this does remove Stardust Dragon. Speaking of Stardust Dragon, there he is. He's one of your better cards you can make on an open board. He's also very nice when you're going in for a huge push to protect yourself from Mirror Force. He gets through Bottomless. And then you got Colossal Fighter, so this is like the OTK with Armory Arm if you manage to get that off. Also, he's just very good against dragons because you can put him in like defense mode, and you know they can't get rid of it. It's basically like just a really good buffed up Spirit Reaper. Also, you can like trade into like Titanio against plants. You can trade into Red Eyes against the Dragon deck. You can trade into Dark Arm Dragon, as long as you don't have warriors in your graveyard, which can be a little tricky since we do run Malicious and Armagreffer Gardena. So you got to be careful with that, because then you're going to be over 2800 attack and you can't trade and then like special summon again. Also against dragons, you have to be careful because of Koaki Drago, because if they get that on the field, Colossal is a dark monster, so you can't special him. So you have to be careful of that. But yeah, that goes over the entire main deck. Let's jump into the options, the secondary options you can run for the main deck. These are some cards. I've tried all of these cards, and I'm not 100% sold on which ones they should be, but here are some options. All of the ones that I have tried and considered, still trying to figure out. So first we got Elfin. This is very nice because earlier when I was talking about having trouble getting over monsters that are larger than 2300, without needing an Armed Wing already set up for your second Vayu, you can just send Elfin, and then you have an instant 25 with the Vayu, which is very nice. The problem with Elfin is that you can't normal summon him from hand like you can Sirocco. The only time you can is if you have a Synchro already on board, or Gale on board or something. Probably be a little bit harder to get Gale on board, honestly, but yeah, that's Elfin. It's also a little bit weird because you do run the 2 Malicious as well, so having 2 Malicious plus Elfin is like 3 monsters that you can't do anything with in your hand, but having the 3 Greffer does help this a lot more than just the 2. Which is what I used to run in my other list, was only 2 Greffers, so I bumped it up, and now these cards are not stuck in hand nearly as much. The other card, another card you can run in your other monster slot is 3rd Sirocco. Kind of talked about this a little bit. I think it's fine. It helps your mirror and your Blackwing matchup a lot more, but once we go over my 50 game stretch of the matches I played, you'll see why I don't play 3 Sirocco. Then we've got DD Crow. I kind of talked about this a little bit. You could main deck DD Crow and it would probably be fine. I know James Ark has done it recently. I think there was another player who did this recently too, outside of Vayu in a different deck, and it worked pretty well too. I think he topped the last tournament, so I know Rognik has been trying main Crow as well. So we got Morphing Jar. So Morphing Jar is like, this is a card I like a lot, especially from GOAT format, because I don't know if you guys know, but I'm a top player in GOAT format as well. I really like that format. My team, Rank and Destruction, the 2 retro formats we focus on are Edison and GOATs, so a lot of GOAT history there. Morphing Jar is just really good. It's just really hard to use it properly. Like, if you make it obvious, your opponent is just gonna set their hand and then attack into you, and then it's like Morphing Jar didn't do anything, and now the game's going to be even harder for you to play through. The best way to use Morphing Jar is to make it not obvious at all. And also, when I side in cards like Dust Tornado, it makes Morphing Jar even better, because when they attack, you could only set, like, if you're going second and your opponent has a back row, you could set Jar, set Dust Tornado, and when they go on turn 3 or whatever and then attack into the Jar, you can Dust Tornado in battle phase and pop the back row and then set another one, and now you're going +1, making up for the -1 from the battle phase. So now you're resetting the game, everybody's going to have the equal amount of cards, and yeah, that's just a really neat play you can do. That comes up in GOATs a lot when you play Morphing Jar. But the reason I like Morphing Jar in this deck, enough about the GOAT comparison crap, is because the malicious engine with the Grepher, especially 3 Grepher, your hand size is going to be really low past turn like 3. Like, your hand size might be like 1 or 2 or maybe even 0. So having Morphing Jar as like a follow-up after you've expended all the cards in your hand to go super crazy can be very nice to get you right back into the game too, especially if they have one of those like one-of safety net cards to stop them from dying, or if they have the perfect combination of cards like Brain and Caius to like nullify all the board presence you have. Morphing Jar can be like a very unique card that no other card can do that can put you back into the game. So then the next card we've got is the 3rd Raikou. You could do 3 Raikou. I think it's possible. I kind of talked about this a lot earlier. It's just, I don't think you need 3. I just don't think you need it. So, but if you want to run it, you could run it. Then you got Sangan. Sangan's cool. He works well with Torrential. He's a dark for Allure. He's a dark for Dad floating in the grave. He does add you Gale and Card Trooper and DD Crow post board, which are very good cards to add off his effect. He could also add you like a Vayu or Plague or something. Set up Grepher or set up like normal summon Plague and then like do the army arm play, whatever. Sangan's good. He's slow. It's the reason I don't like him. He's too slow. My list is trying to play fast. The only time my list isn't trying to play fast is like after my sideboard. Like, we'll jump back to this real quick. So whenever I'm bringing in Oppression, especially Oppression, the Return comes out, the Malicious comes out, you know, sometimes the Gores might come out too, if I'm going a lot higher on the traps, and then like whatever other cards I need for the matchup come in. So like I'm getting rid of the gas cards that I was running, and I'm putting in like a more slower standard list. So the reason I don't play Sangan is because I don't want to side Sangan. It makes no sense to side Sangan. It's a waste of a side slot, number one. Number two, it doesn't really change anything. It's just kind of like a consistency / like glue kind of card. So I'm either going to main deck Sangan or I'm not going to play it at all. And since my game one strategy is to play all these super fast, aggressive, combo-y blowout cards, it makes no sense for me to run Sangan when I'm trying to finish the game in the first few turns, because Sangan takes like 2 turns for it to truly get value. Then we got Hamster. This is another option. He just helps with the Caius. So like, if you choose to run 3 Caius, you need Hamster. I think you need Sangan. I think you need Raikou and Hamster if you want 3 Caius. He helps getting the Raikous out and sticking them so that you can convert the Raikou later on your following turn. Other than that, I don't think Hamster is that good. And especially because I only run 2 Raikou, I don't really want to run Hamster. I have tried it though. Like I said, I have actually tried 1 Hamster, 2 Raikou, and I just didn't like it. Then you got a second Book of Moon. So I think you only really need the 1 for the 2 Raikou. 2 Book of Moon, like, it's fine. You could probably get away with it, probably be okay. I just don't think you need it. But it is one of the spell cards I would run to fill out the rest of the deck. You've got Gold Sarcophagus. This is the card I think that is the most shocking out of all of these, other than Morphing Jar. Gold Sark is essentially like an upstart goblin, but it's slow as fuck. Now, why would I want to run a slow card when I was just talking about how Sangan is also slow, and it's like too slow? The difference between how slow Gold Sark is and what it does, and how slow Sangan is and what it does, is that Gold Sark, you can banish Dark Arm Dragon, you can banish Burial from the Different Dimension, you can banish Return from the Different Dimension, or you could banish like Heavy Storm if you absolutely need to and those other 3 cards aren't available. Or even Brain Control. That's also a pretty good one as well. So the difference is that like when you activate and resolve Gold Sark after 2 turns, you're getting a stupidly good limited card that could potentially just win you the game as soon as you play it. Whereas with Sangan, it's not doing that. It's kind of just, it's taking up your normal summon, number 1, whereas Gold Sark is a spell. But number 2 is like, the cards you're adding off Sangan are not going to win you the game on the spot. So, yeah, Gold Sark, it's like a 2-turn upstart that doesn't give your opponent life points. And you're also getting exactly what you want, opposed to like, you could upstart and draw a Vayu, and not have a Greffer. Or you could upstart and draw a second copy of Bottomless or something, or anything that doesn't really help you progress and kill them right then and there, especially because you're giving them life points. But Gold Sark, I really like it. It just gets you exactly what you want, and if they're not already dead by the time Gold Sark adds you the card you banished, then they're going to be dead when you get the card after it resolves, like 99% of the time. Gold Sark actually works really well with Burial and Return at the same time. So not only can you send these cards off the Gold Sark and then add them to, when Sark resolves, but you can actually like Gold Sark a monster. So like you could Gold Sark, I don't know, Plague or Malicious or something, if you have either one in the graveyard already. Then you could activate Burial and send the Plague or the Malicious back to the graveyard. And now you can use these cards that were removed from play to be added off the Gold Sark. So like, it's kind of almost like a foolish Burial too. Like, it's like how Armonite would send a monster to the graveyard. You can potentially do the same thing if you have Burial plus Gold Sark. Like, you banish whatever you need, and then from the Gold Sark, and then you Burial it back, and now you can use it. Same thing with Return. Is like, with Return, you could banish a Dark Greffer, right? Like, as stupid as that sounds, with Gold Sark, you could banish a Dark Greffer, and then that turn you can use Return, summon out the Dark Greffer, use his effect, and now you can push for a game. So it's just cute little synergy that I think is actually really nice. Anyway, then there's Upstart Goblin. This is just in case you don't want to do the Gold Sark stuff because you don't believe in it, and you'd just rather have the Gold Sark cycling. So that works there too. Then you got Dimensional Prison. I kind of talked about this earlier, that it can kind of take up the slots for Bottomless. They just work differently. Then Icarus Attack, I talked about this too. Running like 1 or 2 copies of Icarus Attack could be something you could do, especially if you're on 3 Sirocco and like 1 to 2 DD Crows, or maybe like the Elephant in the main deck. Icarus could work. Moving on to side options, the only monster I have in here as like a true side option would be Kaiku. Like 1 copy of Kaiku. Kaiku's cool, it requires protection. So like, it's kind of like Fossil Dino, where like, it's a floodgate monster, but it needs to be protected, otherwise your opponent could probably just run it over. So the only matchups where like, that's harder for them to do is the mirror match, because they don't really have cards that can run it over by itself other than like Sirocco or Cyber Dragon post board, or the Card Trooper. So like those are like the main 3 ways they could run it over, since they can't use their Vayu stuff in the graveyard. Also, it's pretty good against Diva decks that run Miracle, because this prevents them from using Miracle Fusion to get an absolute 0. It's also pretty good against Lightsworn. It's just a lot harder to use it because this gets run over by a lot of the cards that Lightsworn runs, and they have Honest. But if you can somehow get Kaiku to stick and then resolve its effect to banish 2 cards in their grave through battle, that would probably be very hard to do. But on paper, in theory, it could be very good because you could get rid of 2 names for their Judgment Dragon. They'll probably not resolve it that game. Lightning Vortex. This is very good against the Dragon decks. The only reason I don't have it actually auto-included in my side is because Vortex is only good after they've resolved all their cards. So, in my mind, obviously, you'd much rather have Oppression stop the cards that would be coming out, opposed to taking a shitload of damage, hoping you don't die, and then using Lightning Vortex. And especially now that they're running like Prime and stuff, I think Prime stops Lightning Vortex. I'm not 100% sure, but they could make a Stardust Dragon or something. And like Lightning Vortex, it's a spell torrential that only hits your opponent, and the discard is fine because you can get rid of Vayu or something, but it's just way too reactive. It's too slow. It's not like a torrential where you can flip it and stop them then and there. You have to actually take the damage or have something that you have on board die and then next turn use it. So that being said, though, it's still pretty good. Traps, Dimensional Prison, and Icarus. These can... The reason they're also on the side is because they're also decent side cards. They're not just decent main cards. So that's why those... Alright, then we've got Light Imprisoning Mirror. This card's very good against Fairies and Lightsworn, but unfortunately those are the only 2 decks this would ever come in against. So, like, I would consider 1 copy at least in the side. 2 copies could help that matchup a lot more, but at that point you're dedicating upwards of 2 side slots for just 2 matchups, and I don't know. I don't really like dedicating that much side space for only a couple matchups, but arguably those are some of the tougher matchups for this deck, so maybe it's justifiable. It can conflict a little bit with your Raikos as well, so a lot of people, what they tend to do is when they side these in, if they are running them, they will side out the Raikos, and that's just not something that I want to do. I think the 2 Raikos are pretty core, and I want them versus like every single deck, so yeah, just not something I'm too keen on doing, but this is a powerful card, so it should be worth mentioned as an option. Then we got Mind Crush. I think this is like the only true card that can totally stop Dragon Turbo in its tracks, because like all the other cards, they can just wait to play through them, like Oppression and stuff, till they have the other stuff, like the Trunade or the Heavy Storm and the MST, etc., to hit the Oppression. Whereas like Mind Crush is like that one card that's impossible for your opponent to play around. Very, very careful when you use it. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have the right reads. It's a risky card, but truly this card's insane. It also can come in against like Black Wings, which is actually something I do a lot because they play Whirlwind. And also, like, I've played a ton of Black Wings since I started playing this format, so I have a very good idea of how the deck plays, and I can call Kalut in hand even if I don't see it added like 90% of the time, which can stop them as well. Also, it's good against Machina because they like add the Fortress and stuff. Anything that like searches and adds cards, you could technically put Mind Crush in with. Also, anytime I'm bringing in Deck Devastation Virus, I'm going to be bringing in Mind Crush as well because this lets you see their hand. Also, Mind Crush works well with Dust Shoot too, which, yeah. But, yeah, Mind Crush is stupidly good. It's limited for a reason. Pulling the Rug. This, I feel like, is pretty much almost mandatory as a side deck option these days. It hits like the Diva decks and the Monarch decks, which are like everywhere in some capacity, so you really want Pulling the Rugs as a side option for sure. I think it doesn't even matter what deck you're playing. If gadgets pick up in popularity again, this would be good there as well. Yeah, Pulling the Rug's just a solid card. It's also a counter trap, so as soon as you flip it, your opponent can't really chain to it unless they have one of their own, like 7 Tools of the Bandit. So this card is very good against decks that play counter traps, like Gladiator Beasts. This will come in against Glads for sure, if I do have it in my side, because you can chain it to the War Chariot. It's also good against decks that play Dark Bribe, like Blackwings. It's also good at stopping Icarus attack from Blackwings as well. I really think 7 Tools of the Bandit is a solid card. This would compete with the side slots that I dedicate to Dust Tornado, which is the only reason I have it here in an option slot, because like these two compete with each other the same way that Dimensional Prison kind of competes with Bottomless. I think in the right metagame or the right kind of build where you don't need to worry about Dimensional Fissure crap or Necro Valley crap, or you have some way to play through it, maybe 7 Tools would be just the better slot overall over the Dust Tornado. But Dust Tornado is a lot more of a safer choice than 7 Tools is, but 7 Tools can be very, very good against a lot of the decks that tend to win through their counter traps, or just their blowout traps in general. It's also pretty good against Phoenix Wing as well, because again, like they're going -1 when you flip tools because they already discarded a card. So yeah, be on the lookout for 7 Tools of Bandit. I think this card's going to see a lot more play if people start to catch on. And for option slots in the extra deck, you could run a second Chimera Tech. You could run Black Rose Dragon, which notably was not in my shell list. The reason is because like anytime you have the opportunity to make a 7-star, it's always with Gale, or I guess it could be with Sirocco plus Plague. So it's not always with Gale, but it's pretty damn close. Because anyway, Black Rose, I've just never summoned it. Never. I have almost 200 games on Vayu Turbo. Not a single time have I summoned Black Rose Dragon. Not a single time. It's every time I make a 7, it's almost always literally just the Armor Master. Or anytime I have an opportunity to make a 7, and it can't be Armor Master because like it's Plague or something, I end up just not doing it anyway. So Black Rose Dragon is a staple 7 of in like almost every deck, but I just have not ever summoned this card in Vayu Turbo, so I have just removed it from my shell list and put it into the option slot because it's still Black Rose Dragon, but just has not come up, man. Second Silverwind. If you're running Elfin in your list, then I think you probably want a second Silverwind, because Elfin gets you to Armor Master faster with your Vayu stuff, and then with Burial, you're probably going to have second Silverwind come up a lot more than you would think. So if you're running Elfin, I think run second Silverwind. Second Colossal Fighter. This one's a bit spicy. Maybe I should put this in the tech list thing that we're going to get into after the options, but I don't know. Second Colossal is really nice. Sometimes when you're facing dragons, they can get rid of the first one because of Lightning Vortex, or they just eventually see the Quacky Drago and have a way to get through it. But also, like, Colossal is just good, and sometimes you blow through the first one so fast, and you do have the little bit of room to mess around with your extra slots here. So, like, second Colossal could just be pretty nice. He's also fucking huge in this deck because you have the Malicious and the Arma Greffer Gardener stuff. So he could... I've had this guy get as large as 3,300 before. So, yeah, he's just a really big body and a really good card. You could run too. I mean, there's not much more else to say. Then you got Thought Ruler. So this is a card that I think people have started to consider as like a staple in Vayu Turbo, or in most decks that can make 8 stars semi-regularly and have the room. But in my opinion, like, the best decks that Thought Ruler is good against is like Diva Frogs or like Hero Frogs, or any kind of like deck that plays all those targeting spell traps, like the Phoenix Wing stuff, maybe even zombies. But the reason I don't like it as like a quote-unquote staple anymore, part of the shell, is because the only time you're gonna get Thought Ruler out without it being interrupted, because of the cards that they're running are like the Phoenix Wings, is like if you make it on an open board. So like this would stop Brain Control and Soul Control or Soul Exchange, stuff like that, on an open board, which is very nice and something that Stardust cannot do. If you follow my channel, you know that I made this under Blaze Accelerator before, so maybe that's why I cut it. Maybe that was the deciding reason. But anyway, let's go into the tech slots. Not as many as the option slots, but these are all worth noting. First, we've got Stratos. So he can be nice because you can add the Malicious. I don't know if that's actually the right thing or not. I mean, I did play this before. I have tried it. I've also tried Infernal Prodigy as well as like another 2-star that you can use with Plague and like Caius Tribute Fodder. But the only reason I ran him was because sometimes Stratos doesn't search anything. Like if you already go for Grepher, Pitch Plague / Mally, dump the other one, you don't have a target for Stratos anymore, so it's worth noting. But he's also another good RoD target. He's 1800 as well, so that's pretty big. It can run over the opponent's Dark Grepher, which is something you can't do in the mirror match unless you have Sirocco on the normal summon, so yeah, worth noting. Lila is another card. This is honestly one card I have not tried yet, so like half of these techs in the tech slots here I haven't actually tested yet, but I'm including in the video because they are cards I'm going to test at some point in time. So Lila happens to be one of them that I haven't tried before, but I think she has potential. She's a card you can search off of charge like Raikou, but she's also a normal summon that is basically another MST. And since we don't run Oppression, our deck does lose a little bit harder to Oppression because we do have the Return plus Mally stuff. But if you can like normal summon Lila and you have that stuff in the graveyard, or you have Return set, you can pop the one back row they have, get rid of the Oppression, and then you can go off. Also, she's really nice because she works well with Gale and Plague Spreader Zombie. So we're just going to go over these 2 synchros now. We have Arcanite Magician, which is Lila plus Gale. That will be a little bit harder to get onto the field because it requires like essentially 2 normal summons. So like Lila would need to stick and then you normal summon Gale. The only other time that wouldn't be an issue is if like you summon Lila, you pop the back row, you synchro out for your Armed Wing or your Armor Master, Silverwind, whatever. Then you can special Gale and now you can make Arcanite Magician. But also she can make Tempest Magician, which if you guys don't know what this card does, it's actually insane. When it's synchro summoned, you place 1 spell counter on it. Then once per turn, you can discard any number of cards to place a spell counter on this card. And then you can remove all spell counters on the field to inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each counter. So you can burn your opponent for a ton of damage. It's kind of like a Gaga Cowboy in XYZ formats. And yeah, it's just good because it's Plague plus Lila, which could come up a lot. And then at the same time, it's kind of like Brio, where the cards you're sending from hand could be like Vayu and Sirocco and stuff. So it's almost like a second Brio, which is honestly pretty dope. But yeah, I haven't tried this out yet, but I do want to at some point. The reason it's a tech slot is because you can summon Armanite, which is nice because then you get the armor effect. If you are running Sangan, you probably only want to play this in a Sangan build because it can summon the Sangan. You can also summon Vayu or Gale. So an interesting thing you can do is, if we go back to the options here, if you summon Vayu off the tomato, it makes your Icarus attack live. So if you are running Icarus attack, you could consider like 1 tomato for that reasoning. But yeah, it also summons Malicious, which is really nice to get that out of the deck in case you aren't drawing any of your Arma / Grepher and you have a Plague in hand. So like tomato dies, you summon Mally, then you can normal summon Plague, and then you can get your 8-star. Trigodia. So this is one I really want to try, but again, just haven't been around to it yet. The only reason that I haven't yet so far is because my hand size does tend to get pretty small, but He is very, very nice. You can send a Malicious from your hand, which is level 6. Also Elfin, so maybe you would try Tragodia in a list that runs Elfin and Malicious. Sending 6s is very nice because you can steal your opponent's Goyo Guardian, their Caius, you know, any level 6 monster they have, which comes up a lot. And then, like, those cards also float in the graveyard really well, too. Tragodia can also be Caius fodder if you need it to be. It can synchro really well with Plague as well. So, like, you could summon out Tragodia, then you could copy Armed Wing in your graveyard or Malicious or something, and then, like, now you could, like, normal Plague and make an 8, or you could copy a 5, like Sirocco, and then you could summon Gale, and now you have an 8, you know. So Trag's really nice at manipulating its level as well. So I think Trag's just, like, a really interesting card, and I want to try him. And at the very least, like, you can still banish this thing with Allure of Darkness if you have to, right? That's the beauty of having Lure in your deck, is that when you draw these kinds of cards at the wrong time, you can always just get rid of them and get some value out of it. We got Phoenix Wing. I know I've tried this card in the past before in my Light Sworn list. Yeah, I don't know. I just stopped liking this card, man. I think I'd rather have the Greffer. Phoenix Wing gets the discard value, but it's slow. It's kind of like Armanite. Like, it's slow. It's a defensive card that discards, whereas, like, Arma and Greffer are, like, normal proactive summons. But Phoenix Wing's just too slow, man. I don't like it anymore. It is still worth mentioning because there is synergy here. I just falling out of play in my mind. But yeah, no spell techs. The only spell tech that I could think of would be Card Destruction. But as I was saying, like, hand size is already pretty small, past turn 2 or 3. And yeah, it's like a neg 1, and I think Morphing Jar just does a lot better of a job than Card Destruction would do. And side techs, we've got Erin. I know that she was in my last list. I still think she's pretty neat. I think she's still worth considering to run. Just like, she is a tech. She's not really an option. She's more of a tech. But she's a pretty damn good tech. We got Mind Control. So this deck doesn't play nearly enough tuners that I would want to consider this like a main option or even mainable. If it ran more tuners, I'd probably want to. I mean, you could maybe say that, like, you see Plague literally every game, so you could still play Minecon, but you don't want to use your Plague with a Minecon because then it makes your Malicious dead. Like, Malicious requires Plague to be good, so that's the reason I don't do that. But yeah, Minecon's good in the mirror match. This is a card you could side specifically for, like, the mirror match, because you can take their Raikos and get those effects, and the milling is still really good for you. Or you could take your opponent's Dark Greffer. It's kind of like a second Brain Con, and then you can use the Greffer effect, which is really stupid. Minecon's worth noting as a tech. Karma Cut, it's kind of like the same thing as Phoenix Wing, but this would be like a side slot option. This would be really good against frogs and zombies. So, like, against frogs, you just hit the Treeborn, and then you banish all their Treeborn copies, and then, like, that's a blowout because now frogs are fucked, right? Usually, like, you can crow and get rid of one, but then eventually they're going to swap and get the second one into the grave. But if you Karma Cut, you don't need 2 crow. And you get your discard off, which is nice. But again, it's like a discard trap. So it's kind of like the same thing as Phoenix Wing, where I just don't really like discard traps anymore. But it's nice. I like it. I mean, if you want to run a tech, like, Karma Cut's pretty nice. Then you got Starlight RoD. Yeah, it's just RoD, man. I mean, once you start getting to these higher levels of play, Starlight RoD starts really falling off because your opponents just respect the card, even if it's bad in our eyes. But yeah, Starlight RoD, and that's also why you have a second Stardust in your extra deck. It's a tech option too. If you're gonna run the RoD in your 55, you want a second Stardust in your extra. And moving on to the rest of the extra deck cards, we got Ancient Fairy Dragon. Like I said, you don't really make 7s that much. So to me, this is like an even worse Black Rose Dragon, but they are different cards, so I guess you can't really say that. But it does pop field spells, so you can hit Skyscraper, you can hit Necro Valley, you can hit the quote-unquote Carpath deck stuff that he's been running with all those different field spells like Mausoleum and stuff. So Ancient Fairy could be good there. Just don't think it makes the cut, essentially, but it is worth noting. Then we've got Uruguayas.
Uruguayas.
This guy, I haven't tried him yet, but one of my teammates, Hydro Pump, has been telling me I should try this guy out. He's level 6, so you can make it semi-frequently, and he's got piercing. So he's kind of like Armed Wing, which we already have, but obviously our Armed Wings are going to be vanillas, unless you somehow do Gardener plus Gale, because we don't run the Sanguine, but 21 piercing on the attack damage, and then it gains 300, so yeah, I don't know. He's still kind of small, man. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I threw it in here because Hydro said that it's worth noting, but I guess it could be good against plants. I guess I threw it in there. You got Android. I think it was in one of my videos before. I don't know, but it's really good if people are starting to play the burn decks a lot more, like the Amaryllis burn. Mostly just that, but also Chain Burn. She would help a lot. The issue is she's level 5, so you've only got like those 1 or 2 ways to make her, and it probably wouldn't come up enough even if you did have it in your extra for those decks. So not only do you need to run into decks like that, number 1, but number 2, you also need to be able to get the 5-star out, which I just don't see happening that much. But again, like all the cards in here, it is worth noting as a tech. Mistworm, it's like the only 9 in the format other than Gotham's, which Gotham's is just Goyo plus Gale. Mistworm's Mistworm, man, it's level 9. I threw it in there because it's level 9. Second Stardust, talk about that. Tempest, talk about that. Then we got Zemin. This card is just cool. I don't know. I think his effect is really stupid. 2,500 is pretty large as well. Even if you Book of Moon him, 1,800 is still a respectable defense. What he requires is Gale plus Super Nimble Mega Hamster. So it's very, very specific here, but it says if you attack, your opponent cannot activate spell or trap cards till the end of the damage step. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can select the monster, send 1 monster from your hand or side of the field to the graveyard, and negate the attack. So that effect is not once per turn, by the way, so you can do this more than once per turn. Also, it's like it just goes through all the back row, and it sends cards from hand to the graveyard, so like Vayu and Plague and all that stuff. So if you have obviously you will have the side space, but like if you're running 3 Raikou plus Hamster build, consider putting this guy in, man. You would need specifically Gale plus Hamster, but I don't know. He's just he's a pretty damn good card if you can get it out. If you can get it out, leave a comment, show me a replay or something. I'd like to see it. And then the last card here is Red Dragon Archfiend. It's just good against frogs, number 1. Number 2, plants. And I think we've already kind of caught those decks covered because of the deck devastation and the Vanity's Fiend and stuff and the DD Crows. So, yeah, just kind of threw him into the tech slot. He could be good against zombies too. Like if you can run over something and like pop a defense mode Reaper or Turtle, I could see that coming up as well. But yeah, anyway, this video has been a long one. I hope you guys have enjoyed it so far. Let's finally get into the rest of the stuff. This is my total games played specifically with Vayu Turbo. I went back and I checked all of my replays on my account. I tallied up all of them. This is my win percentage specifically with just Vayu Turbo. 126 wins, 41 losses for 75.45% win rate. So when I talk about Vayu Turbo, and I'm making these videos about Vayu Turbo, and I'm giving my input on Vayu Turbo, you should probably listen to what I have to say. These are my current stats I took this morning. As you can see, my win rate went down a lot. We'll talk about that soon. And also, we're currently 6th place right now, 661 elo. Here is my last 250 games. So, let's just break it down. Why did I go from 770 plus all the way down to 460 and then bounce back up to 660? Why did I do that? The reason I declined so hard here was because I was intentionally trying to lose games without throwing the game. Like I didn't want to like lose on purpose, essentially by like giving my opponent a free win. What I was trying to do was play weaker decks so that I had worse odds at actually winning, so that I would lose points and go down in the ladder. You might ask, why the fuck would you do that, Randage? Well, I just like climbing the ladder, man. I think it's fun. I like challenging myself. I like putting forth goals for myself in this game to try and achieve. So once I got to the God rank, I was at the top of the mountain, man. There was nowhere else to go but down. So I figured, why don't we just go down and then go right back up again for the hell of it? And I think it'd just be fun. So this is the zombie list I used when I first started trying to lose these games to go down in rank. Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like using zombies. I was watching Silkus use it a lot, and Jaina started using a lot too, people on our team. So I kind of made this list as fun. I ran main deck creature swaps and a Goku, triple Caius with a Sork, triple Raikou with a hamster. You know, it looks pretty alright, but honestly the deck wasn't too great. So this was the area in which I used the zombie deck, and I noticed I was kind of going like 50% win rate ish here, other than like the last couple games. I think it was probably like 45%, maybe 40% win rate, and it just wasn't going fast enough for me. It just wasn't working. So I switched up my decks a little bit. This list is right after zombies. This is when I was using a Blackwing deck. I made a hybrid Blackwing deck that I know a lot of people have loved playing recently. I know this is a fan favorite right now. Everyone's kind of on the hype train for this deck. I think it's absolutely shit, but I did my best attempt at making this deck playable. So we got triple Sirocco, triple Blizzard, you know, your best guys, triple Shura. And we got one Greffer because it's just too many normals if you play more than one. Two Bora because Bora is good, but you can't run three. Then you got Plague and Trag. I kind of talked about Trag a little bit earlier. The difference is, like, Trag in this deck is like your hand size is just going to be really large because your trap lineup is a lot smaller. You've got Whirlwind to cycle out and draw monsters. Your opening hand could be legitimately like 5 monsters. So Trag gets value here. He can also manipulate his level for Blizzard, Gale, and Plague, which is 5 tuners for sided mind control. We got the 7 tools in here. You know, I think this list, for being a hybrid build, I think this list is pretty damn good. So there you go. If you guys want to try a hybrid list, here you go. You can try that out. Let me know how it does. For me, though, this is how it was. I think it was about 55% win rate. The reason the elo goes down is because depending on who you win or beat, if they're lower or higher than you on the ladder, then you might lose or gain elo, even if you're going 50% win rate or higher. So that's that. And again, it was kind of the same thing as the zombie thing here, is like I just wasn't losing enough elo fast enough for the amount of games I was playing. So what I ended up doing was making arguably the worst deck Edison Format has ever seen. I call this deck Drool. It is a Malefic Necro Valley skill drain beatdown deck. Runs triple trade-in, triple Royal Tribute, Gear Town, double Necro, triple Commandant, 2 of the Malefic Blue Eyes and the regular Blue Eyes. It's got Barbaros and Gadgiltron. It's like you got your trade-in targets, and you got Dark Bribes and 7 tools, protect your skill drain and your Necro Valley. This deck is absolutely shit. Yeah, it's fucking terrible. I think I had like 25% win rate or something over the course of like 36 games. I think it was something like that. Absolutely terrible. This was the deck I needed to tank all the way down the ladder as far as I could go. This was the one that did it. So if you guys also want to do the same thing, load up this deck. It is absolutely fucking terrible. And the worst part is, like, it's terrible, but it doesn't even look terribly built, right? Like, it looks like it would be a deck someone would maybe throw together, but it is fucking terrible. So yeah, it just bricks way too much, even with triple upstart and everything, and yeah, it's just bad. Anyway, this was the Malefic tank that I finally needed to go under 500. I wanted to give myself a clean slate, a fresh start, for climbing again for fun, and this deck absolutely did the trick. Here's a little indicator here too. This was my my stats before I picked up the Vayu deck. So like this right here is where I picked up Vayu, and you can see the results that Vayu has when you play it. And yeah, this was before I was even, this is when I just started playing this format. First deck I played was a traditional Blackwing list, and I was just learning the format, learning the metagame and stuff, so like my win rate's still pretty bad here. I think if I played an actual Blackwing deck again, my win rate and ELO rating gains would be probably pretty decent, maybe like 60%. Yeah, 60% for Blackwing is probably reasonable. But yeah, this was before, this is like pre-everything. This is before I even made an Edison team. This was just me just having fun, so that's that. The main thing you guys want to see here is the 50 game stretch. How did I go 40-10? Well, it's just playing the deck that I just talked about for probably over an hour now. This is the list I've come to recently and played the ladder with. This is the one that I'm not 100% sold on, but this is the list I've been using. I know I've already sent it to some of you guys. You've reached out and asked me for it, and I've shared it because this video is coming out anyway, but this is the full 55 plus the extra deck. So the 3 extra cards that I decided to add into this list was the 1 Elfin, so you can get over those bigger problem cards, the 2 Gold Sark, because like we explained, those just banishing power cards that win you the game on spot when you resolve it is super good. And then for the side deck, we've got 2 Pulling the Rugs and the Mind Crush. We talked about these cards extensively. Then in the extra deck, the 2 extra cards that we've added is the 1 Thought Ruler and the 2nd Silverwind, because we do have the copy of Elfin. So this is the list. Yeah, this is the final rendition. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and take Mali Returned Vayu Turbo to newer heights and try to beat 80% in 50 games. Goodbye. Wait, I can't say goodbye yet. I can't do that yet. We gotta talk about my my matchups here. Versus Lightsworn, we have 1 win, 0 loss. Versus Diva Zombies, 0 wins, 2 losses. Versus Volcanic Decree Plants, 2 wins, 1 loss. Versus Quick Draw Plants, 3 wins, 0 losses. Versus the Vayu Turbo Mirror Match, 6 wins, 0 losses. Versus Rogue Decks, 7 wins, 0 losses. Versus the Blackwing Hybrid Builds, 7 wins, 0 losses. Versus Blackwing Pure Builds, 2 wins, 1 loss. Versus a Dark Fusion OTK deck, 0 wins, 1 loss. Versus Dragon Exodia FTK, 2 wins, 0 loss. Versus Dragon Turbo, 1 win, 2 losses. Versus Frog Monarchs, 2 wins, 0 losses. Versus Zombies, 1 win, 0 loss. Versus Gladiator Beasts, 3 wins, 1 loss. Versus Machina Gadgets, 0 wins, 1 loss. And versus Diva Frogs, 3 wins, 1 loss. Anyway, there will be a graph on screen for you to all look at that as I said them out loud. And yeah, okay, now I'm actually gonna go. Goodbye.